Before the 2026 Formula One season had completed a single racing lap, it had already revealed the most controversial technical secret in years. Not a crash. Not a safety car. Not a strategic blunder. A metal component inside the Mercedes engine the size of your forearm, that is silently delivering an estimated 15 extra horsepower on every single lap of every single race, and the FIA has confirmed it is completely legal. George Russell just won the 2026 Australian Grand Prix. Kimi Antonelli was second. A Mercedes won too, in the first race of a brand new era. And every team in the paddock knows something is different about that silver power unit. Ferrari knows. Red Bull knows. Honda knows. And tonight, so will you. Because I'm going inside Article C5.4.3 of the FIA 2026 technical regulations, the specific rule that makes this advantage completely untouchable until a deadline that is circled in red in every single rival engineer's calendar. And I found something else. A clause buried so deep in the 2026 regulations that not one competitor channel has mentioned it, that could allow Ferrari to legally destroy Mercedes' advantage before that deadline even arrives. If this is the kind of analysis you want, the real story, not the headlines, hit subscribe right now and turn on the bell. This is F1 News Breakdown. We go deeper than anyone else. And before we go in, I want your first gut reaction in the comments below. Was what Mercedes did engineering genius, or legal cheating? Drop your answer now. I read every single one. Let's get into it. To understand why the 2026 Australian Grand Prix already feels like a turning point, you need to picture the moment before it even began. Oscar Piastri. 24 years old. Racing at home. Albert Park, his circuit. His crowd. Over 131,000 people in those grandstands, many of them with his name on their shirt. All weekend, Piastri had been genuinely outstanding. Consistently matching the pace of the front-runners. Outperforming reigning champion Lando Norris on every metric. This looked like it could be his weekend. Then came the reconnaissance lap. Turn 4. A downshift over the curb, a move he'd performed 1,000 times. But under the new 2026 regulations, the hybrid MGUK system can deliver up to 350 kilowatts of instantaneous electrical power directly to the rear wheels. On cold tires. Over a curb surface. With zero grip. Piastri's own words summed it up perfectly. I was spinning backwards before I even had a split second to react to the slide. The McLaren was in the barriers. Before the starting lights had even been raised. And here is the statistic that silenced that Albert Park crowd completely. For the first time since 2001, there was no Australian driver on the starting grid at the Australian Grand Prix. And this was not isolated bad luck. Earlier that same weekend, Kimi Antonelli had already spun in practice at turn 1. Same cause. Same instantaneous torque surge. And Verstappen's qualifying crash the day before showed identical rear axle behavior. As one sharp fan noticed in the comments under the competitor's coverage, these hybrid systems are now second-guessing themselves and making mistakes at critical moments. They were exactly right. Now here's what the fans watching this story had to say, because the reactions tell you everything about where this sport stands right now. The most liked comment, 367 likes, read this isn't F1, the pinnacle of motor racing. It's a vehicle powertrain management competition. We want V10s. 200 people like this one. F1 is not about driving fast anymore. It's about driving slow to charge the battery. That's sad. And one comment, 3 words, 221 likes, simply said, forget batteries. I understand every word of that frustration. But here's what those fans don't know yet. The crash was a symptom. The real story is what was happening inside the engine of the car that won. And it begins with one specific component that no other channel this week has correctly identified. Every video covering Melbourne this week gave you the same line, Mercedes used specific alloy materials that expand under heat. That is not an explanation. That is a press release. Here is the actual component. Here are the actual numbers. Under the 2026 FIA technical regulations, Article C5.4.3, the maximum compression ratio for any Formula One power unit is 16:1. This was deliberately reduced from previous regulations to accommodate the new sustainable e-fuels. And critically, the FIA measures this statically. Cold engine. Bench test. Ambient temperature. No exceptions. Now here is what happens to every other engine on this grid at racing temperature. The combustion chamber hits over 900 degrees Celsius. The cylinder block expands. The pistons expand. But they expand together, and that actually decreases the compression ratio during the race. Ferrari, Red Bull, Honda, Audi, Their engines drop from 16-1 on the starting grid down to approximately 15.4-1 at full race temperature. They are losing compression on track. Every single lap. Mercedes went in the exact opposite direction. They engineered a specific component, the connecting rod, the con rod, the metal arm that connects each piston to the crankshaft, using a proprietary alloy that expands at a faster rate than the engine block itself. So while Ferrari's compression falls to 15.4 under heat, the Mercedes con rod physically stretches just enough to push their effective on-track compression ratio up to approximately 18-1. 18-1. 13% above the FIA's static limit. On track. In real time. On every lap. Legally. The estimated gain from that alone, 10 to 15 additional brake horsepower. And because the engine is running more efficiently at higher compression, more waste heat converts to electrical energy stored in the battery. In 2026 regulations, battery energy is straight-line speed. So while every rival carefully rationed their electrical deployment, Mercedes had more available. Every lap. From 1 to 58. Now, one fan comment asked the exact right question. 65 likes on this one. Remember the fuel flow controversy that was illegal because Red Bull tricked how it was measured? Why is Mercedes compression trickery allowed when they're also tricking the measurement? The answer is this: Mercedes complied with the measurement protocol that was legally active on March 8, 2026. The rulebook said cold test only. Mercedes passed the cold test. No breach. No disqualification. Victory stands. This is what Formula One calls a gray area success. Exactly like Braun GP's double diffuser in 2009, legal, then banned the following year. Exactly like Mercedes' own DAS steering system in 2020, legal when used, banned before the next season. Toto Wolff dismissed the controversy in his typical style, calling it, quote, utter nonsense. We simply did a better job of reading the regulations. And the FIA agreed with him. But they also admitted the loophole was real. Which is why they have already officially amended Article C5.4.3. From June 1, 2026, engines must also pass a hot measurement test at 130 degrees Celsius. The first race where this applies? The Monaco Grand Prix. June 7th. 7 races. That is Mercedes' confirmed window to take every championship point they possibly can before this weapon is legally taken away from them. But, and this is where it gets even more interesting, there is a second technical advantage inside the Mercedes package that every other channel covering this story has completely missed. And it explains something that confused even the race commentators on Sunday. Stay with me. You've heard superclipping this week. Every channel mentioned it. Drivers slowing down through fast corners to let the engine recharge the battery. That's the explanation you've been given. And it is incomplete, which is exactly why nobody could explain Mercedes' pace on Sunday. Here is what every other channel missed. In a 2026 Formula One car, the moment a driver eases off the throttle, the active aerodynamic system automatically moves both front and rear wings into high downforce configuration. Huge drag. Straight-line speed immediately destroyed. Which means simple lift and coast on the straights is completely self-defeating in these cars. Mercedes' solution was elegant. Keep the throttle pinned flat at 100% on every straight. But embedded inside the throttle map, in the software layer that rivals cannot see, the MGUK motor generator at the rear axle is instructed to harvest electrical energy directly from the drivetrain while the driver holds full throttle. Because the car reads full throttle as a demand for maximum acceleration, the active aero wings remain in their low-drag, straight-line configuration. The car cuts through the air efficiently. The battery recharges simultaneously. Both happening at exactly the same time. Every straight. Every lap. This integration, the con rod efficiency, the software harvest map, and the active aero trick, explains why George Russell could run a 46-lap stint on hard compound tires consistently in the 122 range. It was not one advantage. It was 3 working as one seamless system. And smash that like button right now if this is making sense, it helps more F1 fans find this channel. Now let's be fair to Ferrari, because they were genuinely competitive in Melbourne. Charles Leclerc launched brilliantly from 4th on the grid to take the lead at turn 1. The Ferrari SF26 in those opening laps was fast. The fight was real. Then came lap 12. Isaac Hadjar's Red Bull retired. Virtual safety car. Mercedes called both Russell and Antonelli in immediately, minimal time loss. Ferrari kept both Leclerc and Hamilton out, gambling on a longer stint and a late tire attack. The logic was sound. The execution was a disaster. Ferrari's strategy required Mercedes to suffer tire degradation. They didn't. Even with significantly fresher rubber, Leclerc was closing on Russell at barely 1/10 of a second per lap. The gap stood at 15 seconds. At that rate, closing it would have required the equivalent of another full race distance. You may have already heard Lewis Hamilton's team radio clip. It went viral immediately. 226,000 views on X within hours of the race. Arg! How did you not call? How did you not call the pit, man? Leclerc confirmed the reality in the post-race press conference. Ferrari's tire advantage was ultimately useless. Mercedes simply had a pure pace advantage we couldn't counter. And the final irony of this entire story, Lewis Hamilton, who spent 12 consecutive seasons at Mercedes wielding this exact kind of systematic engineering advantage over every rival, is now on the receiving end of it. Wearing Ferrari red. Screaming on the radio. As one fan in the comments said perfectly, Lewis wasn't complaining when he was winning in a Mercedes. I know what a significant number of you are about to type in the comments. Season over. Mercedes win everything. See you in December. And I understand why the data from Melbourne points that way. But here is the regulation I promised you at the very start of this video, the one that could change this entire picture before June. It is called ADUO, Additional Development Upgrade Opportunities. It is written directly into the 2026 FIA Power Unit regulations. Here is how it works. If the FIA's ongoing performance index confirms that any manufacturer, Ferrari, Red Bull powertrains, Honda, or Audi, falls 2% or more below Mercedes on the official performance benchmark across the opening rounds of the season, the FIA is legally required to grant those manufacturers emergency development time outside normal cost cap restrictions. What that means in practice, Ferrari and Honda do not have to wait until June the 1st for the hot test ban. If the performance data from China and Bahrain confirms the gap, they could be legally authorized to open their engines and make targeted Conrod upgrades within weeks. Beyond that, Verstappen drove from 20th to 6th in Melbourne. In a car he openly stated he was not enjoying at all. When that Red Bull package improves, and it will, he will be dangerous. And as one well-informed fan correctly noted, drawing the exact historical parallel this situation demands, just like Braun GP in 2009, they dominated the first half, were mid-pack by the second. But it was enough to secure the championship. That is the real risk. Not that Mercedes wins every race. That they bank enough points across these 7 races that no rival can mathematically recover. Here is my prediction, backed by the data, not the drama. Mercedes will win between 4 and 6 of the first 7 races before the Monaco hot test ban closes the Conrod loophole on June the 1st. George Russell is the clear Drivers' Championship favorite, unless the ADUO performance clause is triggered within the next 2 rounds. Ferrari will likely take at least 1 race win in the next 3 flyaway events, most probably China or Bahrain, where circuit characteristics limit Mercedes' straight-line advantage. But they must fix strategic decision-making first. Leclerc had the machinery to fight. The pit wall decision lost that race, not the car. Now, the most revealing data point of the entire post-race weekend. A Racing News 365 poll conducted within 24 hours of the Australian GP asked one question: was the FIA wrong to allow the Mercedes compression trick to stand? 67% of F1 fans voted yes, the FIA was wrong to ban it. The majority of Formula One fans believe that finding and exploiting engineering loopholes is the true DNA of this sport, not something that should be punished. And now here is where you come in. The question I asked at the very start of this video, I want your answer right now before you click away. Type genius in the comments if you think Mercedes earned every single point in Melbourne. Type cheating if you believe the FIA should have acted immediately, not in June. Or tell me exactly where you stand, no wrong answers. I will personally be in the comments tonight reading and responding. If you made it here, you now understand the 2026 Australian Grand Prix at a level the vast majority of people who watched it simply do not. You know the Conrod. You know Article C5.4.3. You know the Monaco deadline. You know the active aero throttle-harvest hack that nobody else explained. And you know the ADUO clause that could change this championship before June. That is what this channel does. The engineering behind the headlines. The data behind the drama. The real F1 story, not just the one that gets the most clicks. If that is the Formula One coverage you want, subscribe right now and hit the notification bell. Because China is the next race on the calendar. The ADUO performance gap will either be confirmed or denied. And we will be breaking down every data point as it comes. Like this video, 2 seconds, it genuinely helps more F1 fans find this channel. Share it with one person who watched Melbourne and thinks they know what happened. Send them this. Because they don't, not until now. I will see you in the next one. This is F1 News Breakdown. And we are just getting started.